The galaxy had been quiet for 3,000 years. Not the peaceful quiet of sleeping children, but the cold quiet of a machine running perfectly. Every world, every species, every individual knew exactly where they belonged and what they were supposed to do. High Administrator Veltarin walked through the crystal corridors of Zelek Prime, the capital world of the Hierarchical Compliance Network. His scaled feet clicked against the smooth floor as he made his daily inspection. Everything was exactly as it should be. The walls glowed with soft blue light, showing him reports from across 17,000 star systems. Green numbers everywhere. Perfect efficiency. He stopped at the main viewing screen and smiled. The Kethvar were maintaining order on the outer worlds with their natural strength and aggression. They were born warriors, so they became the galaxy's police force. It made sense. The delicate Moralian with their 6 thin arms handled all shipping and logistics. Their precise movements made them perfect for organizing cargo and supplies. The silicon-based Vorthak processed data through their crystal minds faster than any computer. Each species did what they were best at. For 3 millennia, not one being had questioned their assigned role. Crime was almost zero. Wars had ended completely. Resources never went to waste. The system worked. Veltarin had been born into this. Perfection. His grandfather had helped design the early compliance protocols. His father had expanded them to new worlds. Now he maintained them across the entire galaxy. Every morning he woke up knowing that quadrillions of beings were living, exactly as they should. It was beautiful. The soft chime of an alert broke his thoughts. He turned to see a young Zalathi technician approaching, her movements quick and nervous. "Administrator," she said, bowing her head respectfully, "we have detected a new species." Veltarin nodded. This happened sometimes. The galaxy was vast, and occasionally they found primitive worlds that had not yet joined the network. "Standard first contact protocols, then. Send the evaluation ship." "Already done, sir." "The systematic order intercepted their vessel 3 hours ago." The technician paused, looking uncomfortable. "But, sir, there are some unusual readings." "Unusual how?" Veltarin asked, though he wasn't really concerned. Every species seemed unusual, until they were properly evaluated and assigned their function. The process had never failed. They call themselves humans, from a world called Earth. Chief Evaluator Zekmoth says their test results are inconsistent. Veltarin frowned. Inconsistent results were impossible. Every being had strengths and weaknesses that clearly indicated their optimal function. Strong and aggressive beings became enforcers. Precise and careful beings became technicians. Intelligent and logical beings became processors. It was simple biology. "Show me the preliminary data," he ordered. The technician activated a holographic display. Veltarin studied the information, his frown deepening. The humans showed combat capabilities, similar to the Kethvar warrior caste, but they also displayed problem-solving skills like the Moralian logistics specialists. Their logical reasoning approached the levels of the Vorthak data processors. "This must be an error," Veltarin said. "No species exhibits multiple optimal functions. It's biologically impossible." "That's what Chief Evaluator Zekmoth said, sir. He's running the tests again." Veltarin dismissed the technician and returned to his daily reports, but the human data stayed in his mind. By evening, 3 more reports had arrived from the evaluation ship. The results remained the same. Humans seemed capable of excelling in multiple areas that other species could only handle individually. On the evaluation ship, Chief Evaluator Zekmoth was having the worst day of his long career. He had processed over 200 species for the network, and every single one had fit neatly into their assigned category. Hunters became enforcers, builders became engineers, thinkers became analysts. Simple, but these humans made no sense. He watched through the observation window as they completed various tests. The one called June had just finished a complex logical puzzle designed for Vorthak-level intelligence. Not only had he solved it correctly, but he had found 3 different solutions and suggested improvements to make the puzzle more interesting. When presented with physical challenges, The humans performed like trained HFY warriors. When given precision tasks, they worked with Moralian-level accuracy. But strangest of all, they kept asking questions that no test subject had ever asked before. Why do we have to choose just one job? A human female named Hee-Jin had asked during her interview. Can't someone be good at many things? The question had no answer in Zekmoth's protocols. Every being was good at one thing. That was how the universe worked. That was how peace and efficiency were maintained. Another human, Minho, had refused to accept his preliminary assignment to data processing. But I want to try other things too, he had said. What if I'm better at something else? What if I want to learn music or farming or exploring new worlds? Want to learn. Choose different paths. These concepts didn't exist in the network's databases. Beings did what they were designed to do. They didn't want things beyond their nature. As Zekmoth prepared his final report, he felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. For 3,000 years, the evaluation process had been perfect. Every species found their place, accepted their role, and contributed to galactic harmony. But humans seemed to reject the very idea of having a single role. They appeared to believe they could be anything they chose to be. It was impossible. Of course, the system had never failed. But as Zekmoth sent his report to Zelek Prime, he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was about to change. Testing Facility 7 had never seen anything like this. Dr. Zinkalar pressed his face against the observation window, watching the human named June work through his third assignment test. The facility had been built to process new species quickly and efficiently. Most beings took 1 day to complete their evaluation. The humans had been here for 2 weeks and nothing made sense. June sat in the intelligence testing chamber, designed specifically for Vorthak-level minds. The crystal beings could process complex mathematical equations and logical puzzles that would break most other species. But this human was not just solving the problems, he was changing them. Subject has modified the test parameters again, reported Technician Morvel, his voice filled with confusion. He says the original puzzle was boring and wanted to make it more challenging. Dr. Zinkalar had never heard the word boring used to describe a compliance test. Tests were not meant to be entertaining. They were meant to determine optimal function. What is his efficiency rating? That's the problem, sir. He completed the Vorthak level assessment in half the standard time, then spent the remaining time creating what he calls improvements to our testing system. Through the glass, June looked up and waved at them. He was smiling. Test subjects never smiled during evaluations. They focused on their assigned tasks with calm determination. In the next chamber, another human named Hee-Jin was supposed to be completing agricultural assessments. Her patient nature and careful attention to detail marked her clearly for farming duties. But instead of tending to the test plants, she was talking to the other test subjects. Why don't you ever get to choose what you want to do? She was asking a young Moralian technician who had brought her lunch. The Moralian's 6 arms fluttered nervously. Choose? I don't understand. I do what I am designed to do. Logistics and supply management. It is my function. But what if you wanted to do something else? What if you wanted to paint pictures or explore new worlds or learn to cook different foods? The Moralian stared at her with wide eyes. Those thoughts are not permitted. They serve no function. But they might make you happy, Hee-Jin said gently. Happy. Another word that appeared nowhere in the facility's databases. Dr. Zinkalar made a note to research this human concept later. The situation grew worse each day. The humans refused to accept their preliminary assignments. Minho had been designated for data processing based on his analytical skills, but he spent most of his time making strange rhythmic sounds he called music. When asked to explain, he said it helped him think better and made him feel good. Feel good. Another impossible concept. Beings performed their functions because it was efficient, not because of emotional responses. But the most disturbing development was how the humans affected the facility staff. the Moralian technicians began asking questions about other duties. A Kethvar guard requested permission to observe the intelligence tests because he found them interesting. Even a Vorthak data processor had started humming along with Minho's musical sounds. "Sir?" Technician Morville approached Dr. Zinkalar with obvious distress. "We have a serious problem. 3 staff members have requested reassignment to different duties." Dr. Zinkalar felt his scales prickle with alarm. "Reassignment? That's impossible. They are already in their optimal functions." The Kethvar guard Thulkrim wants to study mathematics instead of security work. The Moralian Yexandra says she wants to try what the humans call art, and Morvel paused, looking sick. The Vorthak processor Klexdun has asked permission to learn about music composition. This was catastrophic. For 3,000 years, beings had never questioned their assigned roles. The system worked because everyone accepted their place in the natural order. But somehow, contact with humans was making other species think about unauthorized activities. Dr. Zinkalar called an emergency meeting with the facility supervisors, the holographic conference room filled with confused and worried faces from a dozen different species. "The contamination is spreading," he announced. "The human subjects are introducing concepts that disrupt normal compliance patterns. They speak of choice, happiness, and personal fulfillment. These ideas are infecting our staff." "What do they mean by choice?" asked Supervisor Velmoth, a senior Zelathi administrator. "Apparently, humans believe they can decide what activities to pursue, regardless of their biological optimization," Dr. Zinkalar explained. "They think beings should be allowed to try different functions based on personal preference, rather than efficiency." The room fell silent. The idea was so foreign that most of the supervisors couldn't even process it properly. "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Dexlar, "I'm receiving reports from other facilities. Similar disruptions are occurring wherever humans have been placed. Efficiency ratings are dropping across multiple sectors." Dr. Zinkalar pulled up the system-wide reports. Red warning indicators flashed across dozens of worlds. For the first time in recorded history, the network's perfect efficiency was declining. On Testing Station Alpha, humans had convinced a group of agricultural workers to form what they called a discussion group about individual rights. On Mining World Gamma, human subjects had organized recreational activities during off-duty hours. Most disturbing of all, on Research Platform Beta, a human had helped several Vorthak processors overcome their neural compliance programming. "They're not just refusing to fit into the system," Dr. Zinkalar realized with growing horror. "They're actively trying to break it." The implications were terrifying. If beings across the galaxy started questioning their assigned functions, the entire foundation of galactic civilization would collapse. 3,000 years of perfect order hung in the balance, and it was all because of 50 humans who refused to accept that they couldn't be whatever they wanted to be. High Administrator Velteron stared at the massive display screen in the emergency command center. Red warning lights flashed across the galaxy map like a spreading infection. 47 star systems showed declining efficiency ratings. Production quotas were failing. Most terrifying of all, beings were abandoning their assigned functions. "Report," he ordered, his voice tight with worry. Intelligence Officer Morketh stepped forward, his forearms trembling slightly. "The situation is worse than our initial projections, sir. The human contamination has reached every sector where they've had contact with network personnel." Velteron watched the numbers scroll past. On Kepler Station, a Moralian logistics coordinator named Yex Mira had declared herself an artist and was creating colorful displays instead of organizing cargo shipments. 3 Vorthak data processors on Mining World Zeta had formed what they called a musical group and spent their work periods making rhythmic sounds together. "How is this possible?" demanded Supreme Coordinator Thexulan, her scaled features dark with anger. "Neural compliance implants prevent such behavior. The programming should make these thoughts impossible." "The humans appear to be immune to our standard conditioning methods," Morketh replied nervously. "But worse, they're actively helping other species overcome their compliance programming. They've developed techniques to disable neural implants and suppress behavioral modification protocols. The display screen shifted to show live footage from Frontier Mining Station Gamma 7. A human named Taiho, originally assigned to ore extraction duties, now stood before a crowd of mixed species. Kethvar, Moralian, Vorthak, and others listened, as he spoke about something called freedom of choice. Each of you has abilities beyond your assigned function, Taiho was saying. The network told you that Kethvar can only fight, that Moralian can only handle logistics, that Vorthak can only process data. But that's not true. You can learn new things. You can become whatever you want to be. In the crowd, Veltaran saw a Kethvar warrior raising his hand. But if I'm not a guard, what am I? Fighting is all I know. Then learn something new, Taiho replied with a smile. What interests you? What makes you curious? I sometimes wonder about the stars, how they form, why they shine different colors. The other Kethvar in the crowd murmured with surprise. Curiosity about astronomy was not part of their programming. Then study astronomy, Taiho said simply. Find books, ask questions, explore. You're not just a warrior, you're a thinking being who happens to be strong. Veltaran watched in horror as the Kethvar's expression changed. For the first time in his life, the warrior looked excited about something other than combat. Deploy enhanced compliance protocols immediately, Thexulan ordered. Implement neural suppressors. Establish re-education facilities. This contamination must be stopped, but each countermeasure failed. The humans seemed to adapt faster than the network could respond. When neural suppressors were installed, humans developed ways to block their signals. When re-education programs were implemented, humans taught other species to resist the conditioning. On Industrial World Prime, a human woman named Su Jin had been assigned to factory work. Instead, she now led a group that called itself the Free Choice Coalition. The factory's production had dropped by 60%, but the workers reported something that had no measurement in network databases. They were happy. Sir, reported Communications Officer Dexlar, we're receiving disturbing intelligence from the human home system. Long-range sensors detect massive ship movements. They're sending reinforcements. Veltaran felt cold fear creep up his spine. How many ships? Thousands, sir. It appears the entire human species is mobilizing. The implications were staggering. If thousands more humans entered network space, the contamination would spread exponentially. Entire sectors might abandon their functions. The foundation of galactic civilization would crumble. There's more, sir, Dexlar continued reluctantly. We've intercepted human communications. They're not coming to conquer territory. They're calling it a liberation mission. They want to free what they call enslaved minds across the galaxy. Supreme Coordinator Thexulan stood abruptly, all four arms gesturing sharply. Enslaved? We created the most efficient, peaceful civilization in galactic history. Every being has a purpose, a function that maximizes their natural abilities. There is no slavery in the network. But even as she spoke, more reports arrived. On Research Station Beta, a Vorthak processor named Klexidun had requested permission to study what humans called creative writing. On Agricultural World Theta, Moralian workers were asking for time to explore personal interests outside their farming duties. The concept of personal interest didn't exist in network programming. Beings pursued activities that served the collective good, not individual desires. Sir, Morketh said quietly, perhaps we should consider the human's perspective. What if they're not trying to destroy our system but improve it? Every eye in the command center turned to stare at him. The idea that the perfect system could be improved was heretical. Improvement? Thexulan's voice was dangerously low. Our system has maintained peace for 3 millennia. Crime is virtually non-existent. Resources are never wasted. Every being serves their optimal function. What could possibly be improved? Morketh hesitated, then spoke carefully. The humans seem to believe that beings should have the right to choose their own paths, even if those choices are less efficient. They value something they call individual fulfillment over collective productivity. The silence in the command center was deafening. individual fulfillment versus collective productivity. The two concepts seemed mutually exclusive. Velterin looked at the spreading red zones on the galactic map. For 3,000 years, the network had prevented chaos by ensuring everyone knew their place. But the humans were proving that beings could function outside their assigned roles without society collapsing. The question that terrified him most was simple. What if the humans were right? The announcement echoed across 17,000 star systems simultaneously. Every communication device, every data screen, every neural implant received the same message. Humanity designated as systemic virus. Immediate neutralization authorized. All species compliance mandatory. On the mining world of Zerion 3, Kethvar Commander Thulgrim prepared his forces for what should have been a simple operation. His assault team consisted of 300 elite warriors, supported by Moralian logistics units and Vorthak tactical coordinators. They had trained for decades in perfect formation fighting. Their enemy was a ragtag group of miners, farmers, and factory workers led by humans. It should have been over in hours. Target the human leadership first, Thulgrim ordered his troops. Eliminate the source of contamination, and the others will return to compliance. His forces landed at dawn, moving in precise formations that had conquered dozens of worlds. But as they approached the mining complex, something felt wrong. The facility was too quiet, too empty. "Sir," reported Scout Leader Kexvar, "the main complex is abandoned. No life signs detected." Thulgrim frowned. Standard military doctrine called for defenders to fortify strong positions. These tunnels and buildings should have been perfect defensive points. Where had everyone gone? The answer came from below. A section of ground collapsed beneath his lead squad, revealing a network of tunnels that hadn't existed in any of their intelligence reports. Human voices echoed from the darkness, but they weren't calling for surrender. "Welcome to Zerion 3, came a cheerful female voice. "I'm Su Jin, and I used to sort rocks in the processing plant. Today I'm your commanding opposition." A former rock sorter commanding military operations? The idea violated every principle of optimal function assignment. Su Jin should have been cowering in the deepest tunnel, not coordinating resistance. "Surrender now and return to your assigned functions," Thulgrim broadcast. "Continued resistance will result in total facility pacification." Laughter echoed from multiple tunnel entrances. "That's funny," came another voice, this one male. "I'm Young Su, former data analyst, current strategic planner. We've analyzed your tactics, Commander, very predictable. Textbook formation attacks, orbital bombardment patterns, supply line dependencies. You fight exactly like your programming tells you to." Thulgrim felt a chill of unease. His tactical training was perfect, refined over centuries of successful operations. How could a data analyst predict military strategies? Phase 1. Young Su's voice continued. "You'll attempt to secure the main facility, but we've already evacuated through routes your maps don't show. Phase 2. You'll call for orbital bombardment, but your own logistics personnel are down here with us, and they've explained how your supply systems work." "Impossible," Thulgrim muttered. "Moralian logistics specialists would never betray network operations." "Hi, Commander Thulgrim," came a familiar six-armed Moralian voice. "It's Yexandra from Supply Coordination. I used to manage your ammunition deliveries. I've decided I prefer helping people escape rather than helping people get hurt. It's more fulfilling work." More fulfilling work. The phrase made no sense. Work was about efficiency, not fulfillment. The battle that followed defied every military textbook. When Thulgrim's forces entered the tunnels, they found themselves fighting former agricultural workers who had somehow learned advanced combat tactics. When they called for air support, their own logistics personnel sabotaged the supply drops. When they attempted to cut off escape routes, they discovered that mining engineers had spent weeks creating new passages. Most disturbing of all, his own troops began asking questions. "Commander," asked Warrior Kethdrim during a brief ceasefire, "why are we fighting beings who just want to choose their own jobs?" "Because the system requires order," Thulgrim replied automatically. "Each being must serve their optimal function." "But sir, what if my optimal function isn't fighting? What if I wanted to study plants, or make music, or explore distant worlds? The question hit Thulgrim like a physical blow. A Kethvar warrior who didn't want to fight was a contradiction in terms. Yet here was one of his best soldiers expressing curiosity about botanical research. Similar conversations were happening across the battlefield. Network forces found themselves facing not enemy soldiers, but beings who had discovered new aspects of themselves. Former farmers who had become brilliant tacticians, ex-factory workers who had learned advanced engineering, data processors who had developed inspiring leadership skills. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving similar reports from 17 other conflict zones. Our forces are achieving minimal tactical success. Enemy resistance is adaptive." Adaptive. Network forces followed proven strategies developed over millennia, but humans and their allies seemed to create new tactics in real time, responding to each attack with improvised countermeasures that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. On Frontier Station Echo, a human named Jin Wu led a mixed group of species in defending a research facility. He had been assigned to maintenance work, but now commanded former scientists, engineers, and even ex-military personnel who had defected from network forces. "The key is not fighting their strength," Jin Wu explained to his diverse team. "Network tactics assume everyone will act according to their programming, but we can be anything we need to be." As the battle raged across multiple worlds, a disturbing pattern emerged. This wasn't just about military victory. On every planet where humans had established their choice centers, local populations were abandoning their assigned functions en masse. The war was becoming less about territory and more about a fundamental question. Should beings be forced to live according to their biological optimization, or should they be free to choose their own paths? For the first time in 3,000 years, the network faced an enemy that couldn't be defeated through superior organization and optimal function deployment. They faced an enemy that refused to be predictable. The Central Compliance Chamber of Zelak Prime had never hosted a meeting like this. For 3,000 years, only network officials had stood in this vast crystal hall where galactic policy was decided. Today, a human named Ji Wu walked across the polished floor, flanked by beings who had abandoned their assigned functions to stand with him. Behind Ji Wu came Klexdun, a Vorthak who had given up data processing to compose music. Yexandra, the Moralian who had left logistics work to create art. Even Kethdrim, the warrior who now studied plant biology. Dozens of species were represented, all united by one impossible idea. They had chosen to become something different than what they were designed to be. High Administrator Veltaran sat with the Emergency Council, watching this unprecedented gathering. Around him, network officials fidgeted nervously. Some had removed their compliance badges. Others stared at the mixed group with open curiosity rather than the expected disapproval. "You have brought chaos to our perfect system, Supreme Coordinator," Thexulan declared, her forearms spread wide in accusation. "For 3 millennia, every being has known their place, their function, their purpose. Crime was eliminated. War was ended. Resources were never wasted. You have destroyed galactic peace." Jiwu nodded respectfully. "You're right about the chaos. The galaxy is messier now, less predictable. But Supreme Coordinator, can I ask you a question?" Thexulan's eyes narrowed. "Speak. What did you want to be when you were young? Before the network assigned your function, what interested you? What made you curious?" The question hung in the air like a physical thing. No one had ever asked a network official about personal desires. The concept was foreign, almost meaningless. Thexulan began, then stopped. Her expression shifted, confusion replacing authority. "I don't understand the question." "Let me try differently," Jiwu said gently. "If you could spend tomorrow doing anything at all, without worrying about efficiency or assigned duties, what would make you happy?" Happy. That word again. Veltaran had spent months researching human concepts since the crisis began. Happiness seemed to be a state of emotional satisfaction that had no correlation with productive output. It was completely illogical. Yet, as he watched Thexulan struggle with the question, something strange happened. Her rigid posture softened, her forearms lowered slowly. "I used to watch the stars," she said quietly. "When I was very young, before my evaluation, I would sit on my family's observation deck and wonder about distant worlds. I wanted to explore them, to see what life might exist on planets we had never visited." The admission sent shock waves through the chamber. The supreme coordinator of the Hierarchical Compliance Network had just confessed to unauthorized curiosity about exploration. "But that was impractical," she continued, her voice stronger now. "My genetic profile showed optimal administrative abilities. Exploration was inefficient for someone of my capabilities." "What if efficiency isn't the most important thing?" asked Yexandra, the Moralian artist. "What if being happy and fulfilled matters more than being productive?" "Impossible," snapped Intelligence Officer Morketh. "Without maximum efficiency, civilization collapses. Resources are wasted. Conflicts arise. Beings suffer when they attempt functions beyond their capabilities." "Are you suffering?" Jiwoo asked, turning to address the mixed group behind him. Klexdun, has learning music instead of processing data caused you suffering? The Vorthax, crystal structure shimmered with what humans had learned to recognize as contentment. "No, I am fulfilled. My compositions bring joy to others. My mathematical background helps me understand musical patterns in new ways. I am more than I was." Before. "Yexandra, do you regret leaving logistics for art?" The Moralian's 6 arms moved in graceful patterns as she spoke. "My art helps others see beauty they never noticed. My logistics training helps me organize community projects and art exhibitions. I use all my abilities now, not just some of them." One by one, the defectors shared their experiences. Not one expressed regret, not one reported suffering from their choices. Instead, they described satisfaction, growth, and something they called purpose that went beyond mere function. "But the numbers," protested Dr. Zinkalar. "Productivity has dropped across affected sectors. Efficiency ratings are the lowest in recorded history." "True," Jiwoo acknowledged. "But innovation has exploded. New technologies are being developed by teams that never would have formed under the old system. Art and music are flourishing. Exploration has resumed for the first time in millennia. Yes, we make fewer widgets per day, but we're discovering new ways to make widgets, new uses for widgets, and entirely new things beyond widgets." Veltaran had seen the reports. Multi-species research teams were making breakthrough discoveries by combining different perspectives. Agricultural worlds were developing new techniques by allowing farmers to experiment freely. Even military efficiency had improved, as former soldiers brought their combat experience to engineering and logistics problems. "Your system achieved perfect order," Jiwoo continued. "But order isn't the highest goal of intelligent life. Growth is. Learning is. The freedom to become more than what you started as." Around the chamber, something unprecedented happened. Network officials began removing their compliance badges. A Zalathi administrator stepped forward. "I always wanted to study alien languages," she said softly. "I was assigned to resource management because of my organizational skills. But I dream about communicating with species we haven't contacted yet." A Kethvar enforcement officer raised his hand. "I collect pressed flowers in my private time. I've been doing it secretly for decades because it's not part of my function, but it makes me feel peaceful." More confessions followed. Secret hobbies, unauthorized interests, dreams that had been suppressed for millennia. Supreme Coordinator Thexulan looked around the chamber at her fellow officials, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. They weren't just administrative functions. They were living beings with curiosities, desires, and untapped potential. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Jiwoo smiled. "Now you get to choose."